Classics come in all shapes and sizes, whether they be giant arcade cabinets, smaller but still expensive arcade cabinets, add-ons in other games, and digital-only downloads. But the real question is, what's the best way to play? By this point, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles need no introduction. They were one of the biggest franchises back in the late 80s and early 90s and are still relevant today. Though back in their heyday, they were everywhere. Comics, cartoons, movies, toys, and of course, video games. Okay, so maybe things haven't changed all that much. But their first game, released in 1989 in arcades, set the standard for what a beat-em-up game, and arguably a license-based game, should be. Hey gamers, Spammer D here. So the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are no strangers to this channel. I mean, we've already taken a look at the arcade game's port on the NES, which I'd argue is its own game. I mean, it has its own name. So instead, today we're going to focus solely on the arcade game and its ports. So, as of 2021, TMNT has had multiple fairly faithful ports, and a lot of crappy ones. Basically all the ones released on home PC in the 90s, which we won't be focusing on today. Maybe we'll lambast them in the future. Though for now, let's see our contestants. Our first contestant, is the version bundled in as an unlockable in TMNT 2 Battle Nexus for the PS2, Xbox, and GameCube that came out in 2004, which I will be referring to as the Battle Nexus version. Next up is the 2007 release, which we would get as a download-only version for the Xbox 360 and PS3, which sadly is no longer available. But it did do some interesting things that just begs to be mentioned. This version will be referred to as the download version. And finally, in 2019, 1UP would release the game in its own little mini arcade cabinet alongside Turtles in Time. Though that's basically just the same as getting the original arcade cabinet, so I'm not really sure if that qualifies as a port. This will be the original version. So, now that we know what we're working with, let's jump in. Or at least that's what I'd like to say, except that we've already hit a roadblock and a change.
What is it? It had better be good.
The Battle Nexus version of this game isn't immediately available when you pop in the disc. You have to find it as an unlockable, thus requiring you to play through a chunk of Battle Nexus. And if you've played Battle Nexus before, you're probably aware that that's not a good thing.
I'm the... Don't say it! Don't you say it!
Battle Nexus champion! What?
Alright, now that we're ready to really start, before I've even clicked in, inserted a coin, or whatever, again, the Battle Nexus version is different. It's missing that iconic opening theme.
Bummer.
Actually getting into it, regardless of the version, the game opens up with, well, what else?
We've got to save April!
Save April at least once a day.
Yeah!
And considering that this is the first TMNT game, that concept hadn't been beaten to death yet. Kind of like what I've done to that clip. Her apartment complex has been set ablaze and the foot are on the attack. And it looks great across the board. Yeah, one of the fantastic aspects of arcade games of this era is that visually, most of them still hold up. The characters and stages are all bright, colorful, and crisp. The turtles and their foes all capture that look and feel of their cartoon counterparts, and the animations are fun and quirky. It's only the download version that stumbles a bit here, as it comes with backgrounds behind the gameplay, which stands out since it clearly doesn't represent which era the turtles of this game are based in. Not really a big issue, but as a hopeless, whiny nerd on the internet, it kinda bugs me. But whatever. The action still looks great, and more importantly, feels great across the board. I'd say that in the minds of many, TMNT is the traditional arcade beat-em-up. Simple but fun combat, 4-player co-op, hordes of enemy butt to kick, cheap quarter-stealing difficulty, the works. And a lot of it is retained regardless of which version you're kicking shell in. Combat itself is very simple. You have your basic attack, a jump kicks, and your special attack when you hit the jump and attack together, which is the same for every turtle, except for Raph, who has a rolling kick for some reason. Also, all the turtles can backflip off walls, which serves no purpose whatsoever, but it looks cool. Really, the only overall problem with every version of the game is the controls. Whether you're using an Xbox controller, GameCube controller, PlayStation controller, or even an arcade stick, OG or not, the special attack isn't always responsive. You gotta hit the buttons just right. The jump button slightly before the attack, or it won't happen, and you're taking a hit. And let's be real, finding an original arcade cabinet in the wild where at least one set of buttons isn't completely foobar? Yeah, good luck. And I also found that in the Battle Nexus version, it's a bit harder to pull off the special consistently, but I'm not really sure why. But I know you don't really want to hear about what's the same, you want to know about what sets them apart, big time. And here's where the major differences come into play, starting with the major advantages that the download version had. Online and the challenge. Because here's the thing, unless you're playing on an actual classic arcade cabinet out in the wild, taking that quarter hit every single time you die, there's really no stakes here. You have infinite lives, and that's true of all the versions, except for online play. Playing online comes with a stipulation. You only get 20 lives, which may seem like a lot, but when it comes to the cheapness of arcade games, and TMNT is no exception here, trust me, it's not. But it does raise the stakes, and adds a greater feeling of accomplishment when you do manage to finally pull it off. Plus, you get an achievement or a trophy, which is pretty nice. And to help you score that achievement, the download game was rocking online 4-player co-op, with lobbies no less. You could legit play with strangers just like in a real arcade, just as easily as you could with your friends online or locally. That's good stuff. And while we're on the topic of things that rock, let's talk about the music. The original and download game are rocking that classic TMNT theme song, alongside a lot of catchy and upbeat tunes that just nail that feel of the late 80s and early 90s that blended so perfectly with that classic TMNT style. Plus, it's pretty fast-paced and action-packed, which flows well with the beat-em-up genre. It just really has that classic arcade scene charm. Charm that is completely missing from the Battle Nexus version. Now, I already mentioned this at the start, it's missing the opening theme song, but that's not all. For whatever reason, the audio has been completely neutered. Gone are all the classic tracks that fit the game so well. And in their place, just 2 songs. The same song every stage, and the same boss fight theme. Like, what were they thinking? And my first thought is that it was probably a licensing issue, and it probably was. But both games are made by Konami, and the new tracks just suck, and are the very definition of stock. They don't fit, and they slow the pacing way down, making the game just drag. The love and attention that went into the original score is sorely lacking here. Also, for some reason, the sound effects are gone too, particularly those fun campy arcade voiceovers, just making the game feel incomplete, a shell of its former self.
Ow. Shell shock.
Which is probably why it's no surprise to anyone that coming in last place of which version you should play is easily the Battle Nexus arcade game. While it still plays just as well as any of the others, the butchered music just kills all of the charm, not helped by the availability of it. While it can be found on Xbox, PS2, and GameCube, you still gotta find a physical copy, still have your classic console to play it on, and even after all that, you still have to suffer through playing Battle Nexus just to get to it. I'd avoid this version. Next up is the download-only games on Xbox Live and PSN. And realistically, these games should have been at the top, because aside from that odd background, the inclusion of online co-op alone gives this game so much more reach. Toss in an actual challenge mode and achievements as rewards, you basically have what arcades should be reborn as in this day and age. But unfortunately, this version is no longer available. And even if you have the older console to play it on, if you don't have it downloaded, you're out of luck. But its good ideas and execution of still put it above the Battle Nexus version. And finally, we have the OG arcade version, or the 1-up version. This is the classic, true way to experience TMNT. Plain and simple. The only problem is that, well, finding one in the wild is hard enough, let alone one that hasn't been ransacked. And the 1-up machines are a bit pricey too, though they do come with Turtles in Time, and in my opinion is worth the money since they are the best way to... Controversial? Maybe. Illegal? Probably. The best way to play TMNT? Absolutely. Regardless of how you feel about emulation, which I myself am on the fence about, the fact is that it's the definitive way to play the game thanks to the sheer customizability of it. Play on any size screen, with any resolution, any controller, even keyboard for you sickos out there. It's rocking the classic OP and tracks and can even be played online with the help of third-party software, which is how all the co-op footage in this video was taken. It just checks all the boxes. And since the likes of Konami, Ubisoft, and Nickelodeon have made it rather difficult to play this classic, the industry supporting way, you do you. Because this game simply shouldn't be missed. It is the staple of the beat-em-up genre and of the classic arcade scene, with great visuals and audio that absolutely hold up, and fun and simple combat that doesn't overstay its welcome, especially when you got an entire squad of turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comes highly recommended.